Welcome back to the Wellness with Delaney podcast. Today I'm with Miranda Maverick. She is a UFC Flyweight, elite athlete, entrepreneur, and recent adoptive mama. So she's doing all the things, and I am so inspired by her. I know you will be as well. If you are interested in learning what it takes to become an elite athlete in your own life, to recover, to train like a pro, and how to optimize your health, make sure you tune in today. Miranda, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk.
I'm so excited. Okay, so you are literally outside the gym now, which is perfect because I want to ask you, what is the day in a life of a UFC fighter really like?
My goodness, wild, as you can see. Woke up, took care of some of my business stuff, literally made apple butter this morning. Still have an employee of mine and also a friend who's working on it to finish it up. So I'm always handling my business stuff first, trying to get those priorities handled, get everything packed and ready for a farmer's market and a gun show I'm running this weekend. And then I just had my first training session hitting mitts with my coach. Had to watch the little one while I was doing that. And then I have two more trainings today, and soon enough, I'll be starting back to having my full-time job too. But luckily, won't have that for another week or two.
Oh my gosh, you are doing all the things. How do you prevent burnout?
Man, I don't. I'd say that's the worst thing that I have. I do get stressed pretty often, but my thing is just looking at the end goals. This is my first time having a full-time job working and having a kiddo, which is another big difference, of course. I try my best to delegate where I can now. I've slowly but surely gotten to where I accept help and hire people to help me out with stuff. My husband's a huge help. He handles the nighttime routine for Renegade, which has been a lifesaver so that I can get plenty of sleep, because that's probably the most important and hardest thing during a hard fight camp like I'm doing now to fit in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to have that partnership. And, I think in today's era where we see people like, okay, I need to focus on my career before I can get married. I'm like, wait, no, having a spouse to support you in the craziest seasons is the biggest hack because you're not doing things alone. And that's so important
For
when you
sure.
have, yeah, I have so many like plates in the air. Okay, so you're in a training camp. I'd love to hear, what does like your athletic training program look like?
Yeah, so for me, it's like I do striking a few times a week. I do wrestling a few times a week. I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a few times a week. And then I spar full MMA about two times a week, and train private lessons three or four times a week, which are just like our game planning, our focusing on actual MMA as a whole. And then have a couple classes where we just do kind of technique drilling for MMA. So lots of stuff. I train about, let's see, I train about 16 to 18 trainings a week on average and take a day off at least a week.
Wow, that is intense. I mean, it's obviously, I'm sure as a professional athlete, recovery is a huge part of your
Mhm.
routine. So what are some of your favorite tips for recovery when you're doing such intense athletic training?
Yeah, deep tissue massage is my biggest thing that I go and get done. I would say nutrition is one of the key points people don't talk about a lot, but I include that as part of my recovery, because a lot of people just don't eat right, or they don't eat, carbs when they should, sugars when they should, protein when they should. And a lot of that goes into recovery, knowing when to take like EAAs and things like that to help my energy boost or get everything back into my system after a workout, making sure that you take those post-workout meals seriously, pre-workout meals seriously. That's a big part of making sure that you recover efficiently. And then sleeping. I already, we discussed it a little bit already, but I make sure that I get plenty of sleep in. That for me as a mom now is only about 6.5 to 7 hours that I have to get in a night. But I do my best to get 8+ hours, just because my body is, I'm bruised up, I'm sore, I've got a hurt eye, I've got a hurt nose, I've got a sprained finger. Like whatever it ends up being, I have to be able to recover from that. And the average person, sedentary lifestyle, sleep isn't going to do the job.
Absolutely. Yeah, sleep is so key for regenerating everything. Do you have like a wind down routine that helps you optimize your time that you're sleeping?
Not really. I know a lot of people do that and they have their breathing and all that stuff. I don't really do that. I feel like the second my head hits the pillow, I can go to sleep if I want to, from how
Bless.
bad I drain myself every day. Every once in a while, close to my fight, when I'm struggling to sleep because of just the hormones going nuts and all that, I'll just take a little bit of melatonin here and there just to help myself kind of wind down, because I think it's my brain that messes with me more than anything.
Absolutely. Yeah. You have so many like cogs spinning.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then you mentioned nutrition's important. I obviously am really passionate about the nutrition component as well. Do you track or do you eat intuitively?
I get to where, I know this sounds weird, but after so many years of tracking from calories to macro counting, all that stuff, now I just kind of know.
Yeah.
Because I have my same meals I eat. I have my exact same routine I do for every fight. I've fought now professionally, what, 23 times, and as an amateur, we're in the 30s now. And it's like every time I do this, I do it the exact same. So I don't really have to weigh it anymore. I can look at a piece of chicken and tell you how many ounces it is and all that kind of thing. So I basically do my macros, but I like to tell people that are into the whole fancy diets and stuff, I've tried them all. And none of them work as good for me as just balancing a healthy diet with all the different carbs and proteins and all that stuff. I do, of course, stay away from like fried food. I stay away from processed food, sugars, natural sugars. I love. I obviously have my own honey business. I love eating honey and exchanging honey for regular sugar. That is great, I think. Oop.
Oh, so cute. Her little sounds.
Um, so I eat a ton of honey. I like it as even a pre-workout for myself. I'll have a little bit of honey to give me myself that extra boost of energy. And then one of the big things I tell people is a lot of people drink their calories, and I'm huge about just drinking pure water. Drink water all the time. Try to get in a gallon a day, depending on your size. I don't get in a gallon every day. That's one thing I try to work on, but it's usually around 3/4 of a gallon.
That's amazing. I'm really all of a sudden having a hard time hydrating enough, and I've never had that issue. So I'm like trying to force myself to drink more water,
Yeah,
drink my electrolytes, all the things. And it sometimes is hard when you get busy and just forget, but it's so
for
important.
sure.
Do you drink caffeine or do you stay away from it?
I stay away, and it's kind of wild. People are like, how do you do what you do without
Yeah.
some kind of boost? And I'm like, I think it's how I was raised. Like, I grew up on a ranch. We literally woke up with the sun. You got busy. There wasn't a wake up call or having a cup of coffee before you went outside and worked. So for me, it's just get up and go. You should always be motivated enough to get up and get to work. Our
Mhm.
bodies aren't meant to have some kind of energy boost to get up and survive, And like my husband has tons of caffeine all the time. Like he lives on it. And I'm like, I can't stand it because I feel like it's a weakness thing for me. Like if I have to have caffeine, then I'm not doing what I need to be doing correctly. I need to have the motivation to get up without having some caffeine involved. I know that probably irritates a lot of people, but that's how I handle
No, I
it.
love it. I mean, it's a strong mindset. I think a lot of it is like that mindset. I'm working towards weaning myself currently because
Yeah.
that's one thing that I've struggled. Like diet, dialed in, caffeine, I've struggled. So I'm working on like working down from coffee to matcha and hopefully then
There
to
you
not
go.
need it. So
But
we're on our way.
it doesn't really hurt a diet that much. It's not like it
Yeah.
hurts anybody unless you're having big amounts. Mine is just like a mental thing. I don't like being dependent on it. But it's not like, oh, you take caffeine, it's gonna make you less healthy. I just feel like it's something I don't need to supplement into my life at all. So leave it out.
I love that. That's amazing. And I mean, not an easy thing to do in this world where everyone's like, oh, coffee this, coffee that, let's get a coffee.
Exactly.
Like it's so countercultural, but it has that like that mindset of like, no, you don't need to rely on anything but yourself and God.
Right.
So
Exactly.
with all of this, I mean, being a woman who's obviously like an elite athlete, very strong, like you're really balancing the two, like the nurturing, the motherhood side, the entrepreneurship, the fighter, all this. What is your advice for women who want to be their strongest selves yet, like physically and mentally?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing is don't depend on yourself. I'm a huge believer in God. I'm a huge Christian. I try to put my faith first. And I always tell everybody anything good you see from me is not me. Glory goes to God in that. And that doesn't mean that non believers or whatever can't be successful. But for me, I definitely credit God. Like, I shouldn't be where I'm at. Like, I never planned to be a UFC fighter. I never planned, well, now I've planned, of course, but for me, it's kind of unreal being a mom at this stage. It's one of those things I've dreamed of and prayed for a long time. And, here she is finally. And it's like one of those things that's just a miracle. And for her to be as healthy as she is, and for me to not have more injuries than I've had. And I've definitely had my trials. I've had some rough times and times where I've had some mental illness or times where I've just been like, wow, I might never fight again, or I lose a fight. Those are rough too. And it's hard to explain to somebody who doesn't do that high level of something, like highest highs and lowest lows. It gets really depressing when you lose because it feels like everyone's dependent on you. I try my best to support my family with the funds that I make. And my whole goal in fighting is to get enough finances to where I can support my family's future and invest properly, to where Renegade will have a great life growing up, and to where my dad and my mom are set for life and they don't have to struggle. And, they've done everything for us kids and gotten us to where we are. And I plan on doing the same for my children.
That's so beautiful. And I love the legacy component. It's not just about like the here and now, it's about what you're building for your family. So, kind of getting into that, I know you recently adopted Renegade. Can you tell us a little bit about the journey? Like, what led you to adopt?
As far as her adoption journey, we adopted her at the day of birth. We actually got connected with her birth mom 3 weeks out from her being born, which was amazing that we had a little bit of a heads up. But then it was a roller coaster from there. We've been trying to adopt now for over a year, and heard nothing for over a year. And it's one of those things that's just such a hard emotional journey. Mental journey, spiritual journey, even, you're like, wow, is it not the right timing? Like, God, I know has something in store for me. Maybe I'm not meant to have a child yet, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was really hard, especially like for my family. We're the first ones to have a grandchild, which is pretty awesome. Like my dad and mom have been so excited. And my little brother has a little girl on the way as well. So they'll be pretty close cousins, which is nice. But when we reached out to the birth mom and through an acquaintance and everything, we ended up getting ghosted throughout it. She didn't reach back out to us until 3 days before Renegade was born. And so we were just kind of like brokenhearted, very sad, because it was one of those things where we had gotten sent ultrasound pictures. It was a go. It was one of those things where we're like, all right, this is 98% chance going to happen. We're so excited. Let's start getting stuff. And then we got ghosted for over 2 weeks, and we were just like, okay, it's not going to happen. But, we have faith that it might still happen. And I continued reaching out. I was kind of stressing myself, crying every night. Like, my husband and my dad, they were both like, hey, like if it needs to be let go, let it go. And I'm like, no, I feel like this was meant to be. The way that we got in touch with her to begin with, the events that led up to that happening, I was like, no, like this is meant to happen. I just feel it. And, feelings can be deceitful. So I knew at the end of the day that it may not be something, but I wanted to do my due diligence and put every effort I could, because I'm like, if I can't struggle for a couple weeks to have a child that I've been praying about and dreaming about, then who am I to want a kid to begin with? And so struggled and felt that emotion for a while. And then that 3 days before, it was just like a flood of tears when she called us and was like, hey, I'm talking to the lawyer now. Um, my C-section's this time. When are you guys coming up? Like all that stuff. And it was just like, oh my God, it's happening. And sorry, got a tear up now. We went out there and we got her, and she's so much healthier than she was supposed to be. She's so much bigger. She's still a really small baby, but from the stuff that was in her system, she was expected to be 3.5 to 4 pounds, according to nurses, according to the ultrasound doctors. And she ended up being born at 5 pounds, 7 ounces, which was like a shock. We thought we were going to be in the NICU a while, and here she is, a perfectly healthy baby. All withdrawal effects have been gone after a few days, and she's just perfect. She's amazing.
That is so amazing and such a beautiful story. And, I think it's really important for believers, especially to be considering adopting, especially like if we are wanting babies to have a chance to live, like we have to be the ones that are willing to take them in. Like what, and if this is too private, you don't have to share, but like what made you want to adopt in the first place?
Yeah, I'd like to key in on your point too, because it actually makes me like really angry how hard adoption is.
Hmm.
I hear a lot of arguments from people who are pro-abortion, and I'm very against abortion. It's something I speak out on in my entire platform. I'm so against abortion. I think it is direct murder. I think, a baby's conceived is then a baby. Like they don't say I have a fetus in my stomach. They don't throw a fetus shower. They throw a baby shower.
Hmm.
And I find that to just be a heartbreaking, just absolutely heartbreaking thing that the world's like encouraging so much. Even a lot of adoption places encourage it, and they tell the birth mothers like there is abortion, you could do that. And so we found an agency that didn't. They were Christian based and everything, but honestly, like we're the ones that found the birth mother. The agency didn't really help us too much at the end of the day. The hardest thing about the argument against abortion, they're like, well, then why don't you adopt? I don't know. Has anyone tried to adopt? It's not exactly an easy process.
Hmm.
And I find it very frustrating how much the system is against adoption. It's so easy for the state to come take your baby. It takes one call, boom, they take your baby, they throw it to a foster home that checks the boxes. And sometimes those are really great homes, and sometimes they're really terrible homes, because there's a lot less requirements. Whereas adoption, like, you can't even have, there can't be arrests on your record. There can't be family history of anything to do with a child that's bad. And it's like, okay, even if it was an estranged uncle, let's say, they still have to investigate it and do all this work to make sure you're not around them, make sure the child's safe, make sure you have all your addresses in line where you say you're going to be, make sure you're financially stable. And then on top of that, with state fees, adoption fees, and agency fees, you're looking at $60,000 to $80,000 to adopt a baby as a private adoption. And that to me is just sick. That is wrong. The average household can't do it. Ours was a little bit lower than that because we got her so soon. We didn't have to pay as much towards the birth mother, and we got her from a state that was a lot cheaper on fees. It depends on the state that you go with. It depends on the state you're in. Colorado, sadly, where I'm at, is one of the most expensive states to get adoption done in. California, New York, the typical, culprits. Um, Very sad. It's kind of like animal shelters, people are like, oh, all these animals are dying, come pick them up, save these animals. And it's like, okay, why is there a $250 fee when I go to a shelter to try to pick up an animal? I'm just
Hmm.
trying to save its life, and they're like, oh, well, you have to pay for it. And it's like,
Yeah.
why can't you just let us save a life? Like, why all this red tape? And I get that there's a little bit of fees, but the amount that it is insane. And that's the reason why a lot of people don't do adoption. And it was heartbreaking even for us. Like, luckily we're fairly well off, but my goodness, it took a couple fights for me to get this taken care of. And wow, just, it was a struggle.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I mean, the average, even if you're looking at like a middle class household where they can afford
Mhm.
a family, right? They don't
Mhm.
necessarily have that expendable like $80,000 to
Yeah,
get the adoption rolling, right? Like
like,
that doesn't mean they can't support a child. It just means they don't have
absolutely.
that much like
Mhm.
expendable income, which
Exactly.
in this economy, that's like a very valid thing. And
Right.
there are so many people. I mean, I think I've heard that there's like what, twice as many
Oh,
people on
there's
the
there's
adoption list.
hundreds. There's
Yeah.
hundreds. And that's where it's sad. It's like, I'd say at the cheapest you can get adoption done at like 25,000. The cheapest.
Wow.
And that's without having an agency and stuff. That's just paying lawyer fees, medical, and like um legal fees, right, to the states.
Yeah.
And that to me is just nuts. And then you have foster care on the other side, which is great and all, but one, you have to go through that heartbreak. People like, why didn't you do public adoption? It's like, one, like, my husband and I felt like we weren't ready to have multiple children in our family that we knew may be taken away again. I can't deal with that emotional. And I didn't want to be doing it for the wrong reason. And the whole reason would have been to adopt, not to take care of these children and reunite with their families. Because a lot of times they were taken away for a good reason. And I guess I'm very cynical in that, where it's like, man, some people just really truly shouldn't be able to raise kids. And so these foster homes they get sent to a lot of times are overflowing with children. They don't have enough time to focus on this one kid. And people are like, oh, they're just going to go into foster care anyway. You should do abortion. And it's like, if they still have a chance at a great life, there's plenty of foster kids that grow up to be successful, great people. And even if they weren't, are you saying they're not worth anything? Like,
Hmm.
what a hypocritical argument, that you want to claim to be so humanitarian by liking abortion, yet you don't want a human to live. And that's where I get so frustrated. But going through the public adoption is hard. You also don't usually get a newborn at all. It takes at least 3 years usually to get through the legal process of adopting if they are adoptable to begin with. So private adoption is hard. Yeah. And Pete and I are one of hundreds of people just at our agency looking for a child. And a lot of them are people who struggle with fertility, um, who, have grown older in age. Maybe they lost their child, many reasons. And for us, we actually spoke about adoption our second date, I think it was, that we discussed it. And I know that sounds weird, but we were dating to marry. And on top of that, we were like, hey, do you ever want kids? I think is how it got brought up. And it was like, yeah, I'd want to have kids someday. And I think I was the one that was like, I'd want to have my own kids, but I'd also love to adopt. Like, I've always dreamed of adopting. My family always kind of wanted to do it, but we already had 3 kids and had their hands full. But it was always one of those things that was like, God adopted us, or Christ, I should say, adopted us into his kingdom. Why don't we adopt somebody else and help them have a better life? And so here Renegade is perfect, and it works out perfectly with my career too. I'm able to keep fighting, raise this kiddo, and hopefully give her, not hopefully, I know I'll give her a better life than she would have had, but hopefully give her an amazing life with everything she could ever want.
That's so beautiful. Okay, and kind of capturing what you mentioned too about like this idea of people being like, well, why not have an abortion if the baby's going to end up in the foster system anyways? On that vein too, I see this argument. So recently, I've seen a lot of people on the left getting really mad about a statement RFK made about like autistic children not being able to pay taxes and whatever. And I see where they're coming from. I think that there is maybe a better way to phrase that because there's obviously a huge spectrum and these kids are worthy of a good life, but that wasn't, also understand that wasn't the purpose of the statement. It was talking about like what's the root cause of autism, right? But with that being said, this side that is saying all this and getting mad about these ableist statements are the same ones that are trying to screen for disabilities in utero so that they have the opportunity to abort any baby that isn't born perfectly healthy. And so I see once again that eugenics, and I'm like, this is really, I mean, the hypocrisy there where like I'm seeing people like talking about, ableism, but they're also the people who want to screen and abort and get rid of babies that aren't born into the perfect family.
Yeah, for me, like seeing the autism, seeing all that stuff, I actually have a crazy story where when I was born, they thought I was Down syndrome. Not when I was born, I should say before I was born. And they weren't, they read it wrong. And I always joke with my parents that they should have sued, like we could be rich already. But they told my parents I was 99% going to be Down syndrome from what they saw in the ultrasounds. And they made them take classes, all this stuff. And they were heavily encouraging them to abort me. And this was back in the late 90s, and my parents were like, we thought about it. We truly did, because they were telling us how horrible life is for Down syndrome and this and that. And they were like, we finally decided, no, like this is what God meant to happen. Like we were so anti-abortion anyway. And they were like, thinking that you might have a bad life because of us was making us miserable. But at the same time, we were like, all right, maybe this is meant to teach us something. Well, then like 3 weeks later, the lady who ended up reading the ultrasound got fired over it, but it was 99% not going to be Down syndrome. And they had just read the ultrasound and put the wrong summary in for them and all this stuff. But it's crazy that, yeah, abortion's pushed at any point. If they're like, oh, you might get sick or hurt during pregnancy, you might have a hard childbirth, they might be autistic, they might be this. And it is like, I feel like there's a whole push of hypocrisy. Now, I know it's on both sides. I'm really against the whole political parties as a whole, but I definitely align more with conservative values just because of what I see as some really just wrong trends, wrong beliefs on the other side that I just can't get behind. And one of those main ones is abortion, where I'm just like, that is so wrong and so vile to me that I can't support anyone who supports that.
Yeah.
And so, we were watching, that movie Nefarious,
Mm-hmm.
the one horrid to watch, by the way, terrible to even get through. But luckily, I was like sitting there with Pete and we're watching it. I'm like holding his hand. I'm like, this is a terrible show. I hate this. Why do you always pick the worst things? And we're sitting there and we had Renegade in our lap towards the end, and they're talking about the part where, you have committed murder, and it was talking about the abortion part. And we're just both like bawling our eyes out, looking at Renegade, like being thankful that she wasn't aborted, because that would have been the push for them to do had it been easier to do in the state she was from.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, and I think you are A, someone who's adopted, and B, somebody who, I mean, the doctors or the nurses pushed for you to be aborted. Like, who better to
Mhm.
speak on this than you? And your perspective, I think, is so amazing because you've been on both sides of it. And look at the life you have now. I mean, imagine had your parents listened, like the legacy that wouldn't have been built. Now, Renegade, I mean, because you're alive, Renegade has a mom who loves her. I mean, you've built this legacy, this platform, and you get to be a positive, like, impact. It's just incredible, like that butterfly effect, right? And so, who better to speak on this than you? And then I would love to ask too, before we move off the topic of motherhood, because I see, in this our generation, obviously, I think women are a little scared of having kids. Women can be scared that it'll ruin their life or end their life, and there's just this push against family. As a woman, like woman to woman, what would you say when it comes to like starting a family, having kids? Like what is your 2 cents?
Man, whether you've been raised in the whole princess lifestyle of you need to grow up, marry Prince Charming, and have a kid or not, like I was one of those kids that always wanted a kid. I really have been motherly my whole life, but I was like, I don't want a husband. I don't want to have a husband to raise a kid. You know, I was like, gross. I'll just want to raise a kid myself. My goodness, having, like we spoke about, a support system that's strong that can bring those good values into a child's life. I have a very strong father figure. We're very close with each other, and to imagine my daughter not having that same connection or having someone to depend on or lean on or be able to speak to for practical things. You know, as a mother, our job is to be that emotional foothold. Our job is to be the motherly type, the one that cares for them, nurtures, all that. The dad is supposed to be the one that kind of disciplines, kind of brings that practicality into it and sets goals up for life, you know. And I hope that I can kind of provide both, and I hope that my husband can kind of provide both. But it is broken apart in this day and age, and motherhood is seen as this thing where it is like this cage, I guess. Motherhood is seen as a cage where now your life's over. Now you have to be completely dependent on this child. They have to be dependent on you. So you can't have fun. You can't do this. And I think part of that is all based in a root of sin of what is fun. What is fun to us nowadays? Does that mean you can't go out and freaking party all the time while you're 30 years old? Yeah, well, then you're in the wrong at that point. I don't agree with that at all. Now, does it mean that you can't have a career? No, go out, have a career, but why can't that career be involved with your child? Why can't you take a break, have your maternity leave, you know, enjoy your child and raise them? I cannot get behind the fact that we were meant to be on earth to live and work our butt off our whole life and then die. Like, that's not how it's meant to be. We're meant to procreate, have children, give them a good life, and make our lives set up to where we can be around that child and they can be around us. I strongly encourage any woman who's going after a strong career, like, I'm all behind it, but I'd also say try your best to have like one that's around your kids more, or at least have a schedule to where you're around your kids a little bit more. But I don't want to get into the weeds of like, oh, now she's being critical or whatever. Like, one of my big things, because of like things that have happened in my family in the past where children weren't handled the best in daycare and stuff, like my goal with my husband is that she never has to be babysat, especially by someone who's not really close to us, and no one with a man in the house. And that's just our own boundaries, right? And I try to have a career where I am training, and it is hard, but I have her with me and she can come there with me. And now it's become easier after COVID happened. I think that was actually a blessing for a lot of people. We're able to work from home a lot of times. They're able to adjust schedules. I feel like family balance is a little bit more considered in the work life, which is interesting because as a society, we're trying to tear down the family structure. So,
Mhm.
you know, there's always loopholes, there's always ways to get around it. And being a mother has been the most rewarding thing that I've ever had happen. You know, I've talked about it on social media. I've had tons of accomplishments and achievements in life, and people would say I'm very successful. And to me, it's like, this is my new level of success. If she grows up and she's happy and healthy and has a good life and is able to go be not only a productive citizen, but also a member of God's kingdom. You know, that's my job. That's what I want to make happen. And just looking at her as she's eating or sitting there sleeping or crying is like a whole different level of love than anyone's ever felt. And if you don't feel that when you're looking at a child, I guess don't be a mother, because that's probably not meant for you.
Wow, yeah, that's beautiful. And it's crazy because, I feel like what I'm hearing from you is like obviously your life didn't end. It wasn't a death sentence having a baby. Like your life opened up, your heart opened up and grew, and like the tenderness that grows from having a baby just seems so, I mean, I don't have any children yet. But just like the tenderness that you see, I think is beautiful. It opens up your heart. It doesn't end your life. Okay, so then into the entrepreneurship side, I know that you have your honey, your pickles, or you're doing all the things. Can you tell me a bit about your entrepreneurship around food?
Yeah, so I grew up on a ranch. We always homesteaded pretty much all of our food, from raising a garden to canning to pickling to vacuum sealing food, freezing it, freeze drying it, all this stuff, right? We also butchered animals. I learned how to do it all. And I think I'm one of the few in this generation that knows how to do a lot of that stuff. And as us kids grew older and moved out of the house, we didn't want our parents to have to do that. They don't want to have to raise a big garden and all that every year without kids around. And so we kind of shared the chores, you know, and I was like, I got canning, I'll do that part, like I'll get that all done. And so how it developed is I made a post on Instagram. Of course, I have my following, and I was like, oh, doing wifey stuff, homesteading for the family. I'm making pickles today, and I'm gonna make salsa and other stuff for them later. And I showed like a little a view of all the pickles I was making, and I got a lot of feedback from that. I didn't expect to, but a lot of people were like, "Would you sell a jar? Would you sell a jar? What kind of pickles? I love pickles." And I thought about it, and I'm one of those people that's very practical. So I sit down with a pen and paper and I start doing all the math, and I start looking at the finances of what it's going to cost in overhead, what it would cost to get started, what all products I would need. Not on a factory level scale. I'm not at that scale yet, but like doing kind of a commercial kitchen style and doing markets and things like that. And when I looked at it, I was like, okay, there's not much overhead involved. And yeah, it's a little bit manual labor intensive, but I can do this. Like I've already done it my whole life. And so I put a post that was like, okay, I'm going to make a pickle business. Who would buy pickles from me? Got tons of positive feedback. Had so many people that were like, I'll make an order. I'll make an order. And so I started off with like 2 flavors, I think. I think it was literally like dill and sweet pickles. And now I have 11 flavors. I made all those 11 flavors within the first month of starting the business, and sold so much at the beginning. Then, after like the social media kick kind of happened, then Joe Rogan and John Anik and others were talking about it while I was fighting Andrea Lee. That really helped it take off, because I think a lot of my fans that may not have been my personal fans on Instagram, but watch UFC and all that, started following at that point. And I still don't make like a solid living on it, but I make enough that it could make a meager living and go to markets and all that on the weekends. And now I have help doing it to where one of these days it'll just be a family business to pass on to somebody, or maybe I retire and I sit at home making pickles for the rest of my
I
life.
love that.
And the honey, I started raising bees when I was 12 years old. We cut down a tree for firewood. There happened to be a bee's nest in it that was honeybees. I captured them, got a beehive, went to a bee association and learned all about bees, and started raising my own hives. That's what I spent a lot of my own money on. It was my first big purchase, was 3 big beehives, bee suit, all that. And I love honey. My whole family loves honey. So why not get into a business that you can eat and survive off of if things went wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. That's so amazing. I love that. And I love that you're connected to your food. I think a lot of people now don't really know where their food comes from, don't have that connection.
Yeah.
So I saw with your honey, I was doing my little research that you guys do the raw, like unfiltered. I love that. Can you tell me a little bit about the benefits of keeping your honey raw and unfiltered?
For sure. So, one, FDA, I'm not sure if they require it now. I think RFK might be doing some good things in there, but a lot of store-bought honey is cooked. What cooked does is it makes it taste like honey. It takes out all of the natural benefits from honey that everyone hears honey's so healthy for, right? So you do not want cooked or what's called processed, unraw, filtered honey, right? So you always want to look for unprocessed, raw, and what did I say? Raw, unfiltered, and unprocessed. Those 3 words all mean it's usually good honey. But you still have the places that add in corn syrup and add in additives to these honey to make them not crystallize. And a lot of people just throw away crystallized honey. And I'm like, ugh, like we need to educate people better. Crystallized usually means it's good honey, right? Honey is going to naturally crystallize. That's just the process. When it gets too cold, when it gets too hot, when it gets too old, it crystallizes. Okay. They found the honey back in the Egyptian tombs. I think that got enough publicity. Everybody heard about it. Honey's amazing. I always joke that anything that's a kind of food mentioned in the Bible multiple times is probably great for you. Milk, honey, water, all these things, they're probably great. And honey is just amazing. As far as benefits, helps with colds, helps with sore throats, helps with headaches, and it also helps with health in general. It has enzymes in it that are good bacteria. There's bad bacteria and there's good bacteria, and honey has great bacteria in it that helps fight all the bad stuff. You can't give it to infants under 1 year old, so that is one thing to keep in mind. But after that, it's really healthy additive to food. And then, of course, before workouts, as an additive, instead of sugar, replace it with honey. It's natural sugar, like putting fruit in your food instead of regular sugar, right? So many benefits. I could go on, especially when mixed with other stuff like honey and garlic, honey and ginger. This stuff is how the old school medicine used to be made before all these chemicals and synthetics.
I love that. Yeah, and I was even reading that honey doesn't spike your blood sugar the way like sugar does, that it's much slower. Do you have like information on that to speak on that?
My husband is actually an expert on that stuff, but I have a lot of people that I'll just speak on what I do know. I have a lot of people that are diabetic and they're like, oh, I can't, it's honey. And it's like, Actually, honey is fine for diabetics in moderate tones because of how it reacts with insulin and how it reacts with all these different like hormones in the body. And honey is just amazing for everyone. Do your research. I'm not a medical professional. My husband knows a lot more about supplementation and the health benefits of everything is in terms of scientific terms. So reach out to Progress with Pete if you want some details on that. But for me, honey is just amazing for everyone. It definitely metabolizes in our body a lot faster and a lot healthier than sugar does. And it doesn't store in fat cells like sugar does. Usually it gets metabolized and can go into every system in your body.
Incredible. So where do people shop your pickles and your honey?
Yeah, you can go to prowlerpickles.com. It has both a honey shop and a pickle shop. It's literally slash honey shop slash pickle shop, or just go to the main page, prowlerpickles.com. You can access everything. So now I have pickles, I have honey, I have pickled jalapenos, candied jalapenos, asparagus, apple butter, Bloody Mary mixes. I have all kinds of stuff on there, guys, even beeswax candles. So go check out everything. And you can use code SPRING25, all one word, right now to get a 15% discount. So go check it out.
Amazing. Oh my gosh, that sounds so good. When you said the asparagus, pickled asparagus is like one of my favorite snacks. I'm like, okay,
Nice. All right.
amazing. I have to
Got
try
spicy
those.
and regular.
Oh, spicy all the way. I
All
love
right.
that. It's awesome. Okay, so tell me, Miranda, what are some of your health goals right now in this season?
Oh, well, I got to cut weight pretty soon, so I don't really have any that are off the norm for me. I've got to keep my weight under a certain limit. I do not encourage everyone to look at the scale. Definitely don't go off the scale. Look at your tone of your body, look at how you feel, the health. Eating right makes the hugest difference. You don't even know. If I have a piece of cake and then go train the next day, I feel like crap. If I have eggs and turkey bacon or something, and then I go train, I feel amazing, feel like $1,000,000. So make sure you're feeding your body what you want it to produce. And for me, that's strength, that's speed, that's energy, and getting up and out of there and making sure that I can fight well, of course. And so for me, keeping my nutrition on point, making sure I do keep an eye on my calories and just start slowing down as I get closer to my fight so that I get at fight weight. And then I'll be chugging some water close to the fight and starting with that water loading. But ultimately, my main goal right now is making sure I get plenty of sleep for this fight camp.
That's amazing. Do you have any, so what are the exciting, like, do you have an exciting fight coming up that you can tell us about?
Yeah, I sure do. So June 14th, everybody can go watch me on ESPN Plus. It's not even a pay-per-view, it's a fight night, so you guys don't have to pay for it, so you don't get to whine and say how you can't afford it. I will be the co-main event of UFC Atlanta on June 14th against Rose Namajunas. She's a former champion at strawweight, and I'm now fighting her at flyweight. She's ranked number 6, I'm ranked number 12. So we'll put on a heck of a show. The cool thing is we've been training partners for the last 2 years or so. And now we're going to be fighting each other and we'll be friends afterwards.
Amazing. I love that so much. So everyone make sure to tune in and show Miranda some support and love. Miranda, where can people find you on social media to follow your journey?
Yeah, you can go to at Fear the Maverick on pretty much anything. So Fear the Maverick, Instagram, X, Facebook, TikTok. And if you guys want to check out any merch, all the way from autographed pictures, autographed collector cards, shirts, hats, etc., you can go to fearthemaverick.com. That's another one of my side hustles. And I'll be having a couple new shirts posted on there within the next 2 days for this fight camp specifically. So check it out.
Amazing. You guys, make sure to check her out. Miranda, I didn't even tell you this. I'm so excited. I just started boxing. And now, after this conversation, I
Oh,
have a lesson after this conversation. So I'm going to be all inspired.
heck
Um,
yeah,
I'm
that's
not very
awesome.
good, but it's
None
very
of us
fun.
start out very good. It's okay.
I'm very excited. After this conversation, I'm like, yeah, like I'm a fighter. I want to fight.
Heck
So,
yeah. I'll
yeah,
have to
love what
figure
you're
out where you're
doing.
based at. You might have to get in a session with me or something.
Oh, would love that. Yeah, we'll definitely have to connect. You guys, thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to follow Miranda, check out her pickles, check out her honey if you love this episode, share it on your stories, and give her some love because truly she is doing the Lord's work in so many ways. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I will chat with you soon.
Thank you, and shout out to Plainview Beef.
1000%. We love them.